Overclocking is a performance-boosting method frequently turned to by those looking to extract maximum performance from their PC. If you want maximum performance too, but don't know where to start, you've come to the right place. In this video, I'm going to explain the most fundamental concepts of overclocking. After listening to what I have to say, you can decide for yourself whether to get into this or not. Let me warn you right from the start. By the end of this video, you'll decide not to do it. If you're asking why, let's get started. First, let's clarify some terms, because the first mistakes usually start right here. 1. Clock, volt, and watt distinction, and AMD curve optimizer. These concepts are different things, and the foundation of a properly done overclock lies in striking the right balance between them. Clock or clock speed. This is the value showing how fast the component is operating, expressed in megahertz or gigahertz. As the clock speed rises, performance increases, but it may not always remain stable. Volt or voltage. This is the electrical pressure applied to the component. Simply put, it determines how hard the component is being pushed to operate. As voltage increases, the component can draw more current. This leads to an increase in power consumption and heat. Pay attention here. I am not saying that volt is consumed power. Consumed power is measured in watts. This is the value we are familiar with from power supplies. I won't go into detail here to avoid confusing you further with electrical terms. Just make sure to not get the two mixed up. The prefixes over and under are usually added in front of these terms. Overclocking, as the name suggests, is the process of increasing clock speeds. However, there is a common misconception here. It is thought that overclocking always causes extra power consumption. I will touch on this in detail later, but here's a small spoiler. Overclocking done right can actually lower power consumption while simultaneously providing higher performance. Nowadays, the word overclock is used almost like a proper noun, carrying a general meaning that also covers processes like lowering voltage and adjusting curves, as seen in the AMD curve optimizer. So you don't need to get too hung up on the naming. Apart from these terms, there are curve optimizer and curve shaper settings that have been getting more popular regarding AMD processors. If I need to explain curve optimizer simply, think of it as a graph determining the megahertz to volt balance. For example, let's say your processor normally runs at 4500 megahertz at 1.1 volts. Imagine that after making the right adjustments, it can now run at 4650 megahertz, still at 1.1 volts. This means you profit directly in terms of watts to performance. In other words, your processor is now running cooler, more efficiently, and with higher performance. Under normal conditions, for the processor to reach 4650 megahertz, a higher voltage like 1.25 volts might have been required. So what we just did was actually an example of an efficient undervolt. Curve Shaper allows you to fine-tune this balance much more precisely. For instance, if the critical range for you is the 4000 to 4500 megahertz band, you can apply a more aggressive undervolt just in this frequency range with the right settings. This way, while your targeted zone is optimized further, other frequency ranges are affected much less. I explained everything quite simply here, but let me be clear. This subject is a total rabbit hole. The deeper you go, the more efficiency you get. That's why if you really want to get the most out of these preferences, you must research the topic in detail. 2. Which components can be overclocked? Overclocking can generally be applied to three main components: the processor, RAM, and the graphics card. I'll briefly summarize the basic points you need to know, as this is all you need to know at this stage. On the CPU side, you adjust the balance between clock speeds and voltage. However, there is a detail that is often overlooked. Some fine-tuning regarding RAM is actually directly linked to the CPU, meaning some processor settings can also affect memory performance. I'll get to this topic in more detail later in the video. On the RAM side, in addition to voltage, you play with the megahertz value determining memory speed and the CL or CAS latency settings representing latency. Technically, the value we refer to here is not megahertz, it's actually million or megatransfers per second. But I won't be pedantic about this. Everyone in the market calls it megahertz. Knowing it that way isn't a huge problem. On the graphics card side, the GPU core frequency, voltage balance, and the speed of the VRAMs located on the graphics card are adjusted. So you change the operating characteristics of both the core and the memory. Yes, you can overclock specific areas on these parts, but your build needs to meet certain conditions for this to be safe and efficient. So let's talk a bit about these conditions now. 3. What do you need for overclocking? The first and most fundamental requirement here is that your hardware must support overclocking. We encounter this restriction mostly on the CPU and motherboard side. If you want to overclock on an Intel build, you need to use a Z-series motherboard and a K-series processor. On the AMD side, the situation is much more flexible. You can attempt overclocking with most AMD processors. There is no restriction on the CPU side. However, it's the motherboard that stops you here. A-series motherboards and specifically B840s have a multiplier lock, meaning you cannot attempt overclocking on a motherboard with this chipset. Apart from this, it is a clear fact that AMD is more cost-effective in this regard compared to Intel. Secondly, you need to be able to feed the hardware sufficiently. This issue is especially important on the processor and graphics card side. CPUs can generally work with many motherboards. However, the point you have to pay attention to here is stability. Depending on the VRM quality of the motherboard, how stably the voltage requested by the processor can be delivered is the real issue. That's why you need to be extremely cautious when overclocking with low-quality motherboards. This subject can be quite confusing and a difficult area to make a choice in. Therefore, I'll put some motherboards I recommend for overclocking in the description and comments. On the GPU side, power consumption is much higher. This leads you directly to the need for a good power supply unit. Your power supply shouldn't just be able to deliver high watts. It must also provide this power in a stable and clean manner. If you are wondering whether the PSU you own or plan to buy is sufficient, you can check the SPL PSU tier list. The third and one of the most crucial points is this: chip and silicon quality. We encounter this situation in CPUs, GPUs, and even RAM. The material used in these parts is silicon. Silicon is produced in bulk on a large wafer and then sliced up for use. If the processor you got came from a place near the outer edges of this wafer, it is generally of lower quality. This means you can perform less upgrades when overclocking. Where the silicon came from on the wafer is entirely a matter of luck. This situation is called the silicon lottery. But remember, if you don't plan to overclock, silicon quality won't impact regular use, so you don't need to worry about it. So, what is the difference between high-quality and low-quality silicon? High-quality silicon can withstand higher voltages and even deliver higher performance at the same voltage. This is a critical factor for those wanting to reach the highest clock speeds or run stably at the lowest voltage. This is exactly why you should proceed with the trial and error method when overclocking. Using the exact same CPU model as your friend guarantees nothing. After a certain point, silicon quality reveals itself and starts limiting you. If the silicon quality in the CPU you got is poor, you might not be able to reach the highest frequencies the processor could potentially hit. This means that every setting you see on the internet will not work healthily on your PC. So, avoid pre-made settings and only use them as a reference to see the safe limits as a starting point. Chip quality is a bit different from the wafer logic. Here, it's the model of the memory chip used that gains importance. We see this situation mostly on the RAM and GPU VRAM side. For example, if you want to use high-performance RAM, like 6600 MHz CL30, you should pray that the memory chips come from a high-quality type like Hynix A die, because there's no clear guarantee for this. Worse yet, low-quality chips can lead to stability issues even at XMP/EXPO settings. To briefly explain what XMP and EXPO is, it's pretty much like a ready-made overclock profile that allows the RAM to reach the speeds advertised by the manufacturer. You can do these settings manually as well if you'd like to, but you usually don't need to. Make sure to keep this setting on. The VRAM issue on the GPU side is relatively simpler. Generally, GDDR memories produced by Samsung, Hynix, and Micron are used, and the general quality ranking is usually as follows. The fourth and relatively simpler subject is cooling. Hardware components automatically hit the brakes to avoid damaging themselves or the rest of the PC when they reach certain temperature levels. If the cooling is insufficient, a situation we call thermal throttling occurs, and the part in question lowers its performance to stay cool. We encounter this most frequently in processors, then in the graphics card and RAM, respectively. Insufficient cooling seriously hampers extreme overclocking attempts. In fact, in some scenarios, this might be the main reason you experience performance loss even without overclocking, just like we see in processors like the 14900K. The fifth subject is hardware limitations. A component to be overclocked can be restricted by other hardware in the build. The motherboard is where everything begins. We can summarize every limitation here as such: VRM quality, the connection structure of RAM slots, heat sinks, and CPU power connectors. If your motherboard is weak, you can't properly overclock even the best processor. Cooling, as I just explained, plays a critical role here too. The processor cooler, the AIB model of the graphics card, and even the case and fan placement directly affect performance. If you're looking for a cooler that won't let you down in terms of overclocking, I'll put a few of my recommendations in the description. Then comes the PSU. The power supply needs to be able to transmit the required power stably through the necessary channels. If you like getting into details on the RAM side, the dependency on the CPU might surprise you. Inside processors, there is a section called the IMC, or Integrated Memory Controller, that manages communication with memory modules. The performance of this part can change seriously depending on the processor model and silicon quality. There is a small footnote here. You might see the OC tag at the end of some graphics card models. This tag has nothing to do with the overclocking lock logic on motherboards or CPUs. Writing OC means the card comes slightly overclocked from the factory. But don't let this excite you. The overclock applied is generally quite minimal. In fact, on some cheap models, the graphics card runs unnecessarily hotter just because it has the OC label. So never make the mistake of paying extra money just for this tag. The sixth and absolutely the most important item: technical knowledge and patience. Silicon quality and the hardware you use demand special treatment from you. That's why you need to proceed with the trial and error method, tinker with the correct settings one by one, and dedicate a lot of time to this. I'm not even counting the tests and stability checks to be done within this duration. Likewise, having technical knowledge is vital for diagnosing the problems you experience and correctly interpreting the benchmark results you get. Therefore, possessing these two is the most important thing you need on your overclocking journey. So, is overclocking worth it? To be honest, no. If you are wondering why, I will explain immediately, but before that, I want to tell you something. These videos take a long time to make, but a large majority of viewers are not subscribed and don't like the videos. This negatively affects the views. If you want to support me, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment. That way, I can make more videos for you. Now let's continue where we left off. The reason overclocking isn't worth it is this. If you are already paying attention to the things I listed, you will already have built a quite stable and balanced PC. However, if you want to get more efficiency instead of extra performance, some small touches can really work. How? Let me show you. In CPUs, rather than overclocking in the classic sense, undervolting, that is, improving the volt to megahertz balance, makes much more of a difference and is much more beneficial for the PC. A correctly configured curve optimizer setting can provide lower temperatures, lower power consumption, and even slightly higher performance. Apart from this, processes like pushing boost clock speeds one by one remain overly detailed for the average user. The probability that it won't be worth the time you spend is also quite high. If I have to give a clear recommendation, if you are using a stock fan and your processor is heating up more than necessary, trying to undervolt might be a logical step. The main purpose of the process done on GPUs and gaming-focused builds is generally to lower the temperatures. If you have a graphics card model without very good cooling, you can seriously relieve the PC with undervolting. Fan speeds drop, temperatures inside the case decrease, and when done properly, you don't experience a serious loss on the FPS side. In RAMs, overclocking is usually something done only as a last resort. If the PC runs stably when you turn on the XMP or EXPO profile, it will be healthiest to continue that way without touching anything. However, if you are experiencing stability problems, you may need to start a thread on forums. RAM settings can take too much time during the trial and error process. Guidance from experienced users can prevent you from wasting time. Bonus item: fan curve. If you noticed, I generally talked about the efficiency obtained with undervolting. This returns to you directly as lower noise and more stable performance. However, if you want to solve temperature and noise problems with a simpler solution that doesn't require you to fiddle with technical settings, adjusting fan curves is quite a good option. If you adjust the case fans and the CPU fan properly, the PC runs quietly when idle and gradually increases its speed when under load. This way, you can achieve more comfortable usage even with a stock cooler. The only thing you need to pay attention to here is temperature values and noise level. Adjusting this is not as hard as it is thought to be, but even then, I don't really recommend manually modifying the GPU fan profile. The operations there remain more technical. Instead, if your graphics card has one, switching between quiet and performance modes via the BIOS switch is much safer and more practical. I wanted to specifically mention these settings because I see they are generally forgotten about. In conclusion, overclocking is generally a task you don't need to do, and it requires a long trial and error process, serious patience, and technical knowledge. If you have a PC that runs stably and cool in your hands, you don't need to even consider doing this at all. However, if you are experiencing obvious temperature problems with your CPU or GPU, trying to gradually undervolt it after performing the necessary maintenance might be a logical step. If you're looking for a few recommendations to get more performance from your computer without overclocking, you can check out the Tech Mistakes and Tips video on my channel. And with that, this video comes to an end. So what do you think? Have you performed an overclock before, or do you plan to do so after this? Make sure to share your opinions in the comments. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit the like button. If not, feel free to dislike it. Stay mysterious until the next video. Take care, and bye.